Dolphins fans, what's going on? Ben Morgan, Fins Up Network. Today we're talking some of those long shots, those under the radar guys, the guys that are maybe currently on the outside looking in when it comes to the Dolphins roster. But hey, at least some guys that I think have a legit shot of making this team's final 53-man roster. I've got three players, but before I jump into mine, I want to hear from you. Do you agree with some of the guys I have? Do you have other candidates? What are your thoughts? Who are the guys you're going to have your eye on as we enter training camp towards the end of July? Go ahead, drop them in the comments. But like I said, let's talk about some of those kind of long shot, under the radar guys. And let's start out with an edge rusher, Mitchell Agude. Now, let's do a quick pros and cons. The pros, pretty much every OTA minicamp session that the media was allowed to, guess who was making plays? Guess whose name was getting called? Mitchell Agude's run stops, tackles for losses, pressures on quarterbacks, would-be sacks. He was getting his name called as a UDFA. That's very, very impressive. Now, what are the cons? I just said it. He plays edge rusher at a fairly loaded position for the Miami Dolphins. You got what? Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Emmanuel Ogbah, Malik Reed, Andrew Van Ginkel gets some reps at edge rusher. Cameron Goode was sticking around last year. It is a fairly loaded position. So not only do you got to beat some guys out, but man, you got to flash amongst some of the best players on our team. Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb. It's hard to stick out when those guys are probably sticking out numerous times every single day. But look who he's following the footsteps of in multiple ways and more reasons than one. He is following in Jalen Phillips' footsteps kind of perfectly. Transferred from UCLA to Miami. Now, besides that, who is Agude just learning from and hanging out with and just kind of being a sponge around? It's Jalen Phillips. Soaking in as much of that possibly on the field, off the field, how to study, how to mix up your moves, how to get around certain guys. Learning from who we think is going to turn into be one of the best in the biz. Jalen Phillips has done great things his first 2 years. So to be kind of a sponge and soak up what Jalen Phillips can offer you when you have those similarities, Mitchell Agude has that going for him as well. But he only does have 3 years of Division I experience. He played 2 at UCLA, 1 at Miami. He was a JUCO transfer. But man, that potential is there. That first step quickness is there. He's just got to put it all together, continue to flash once camp begins. Like I said, it's a crowded position. It's going to be an uphill battle. I didn't even mention the other UDFAs, Garrett Nelson, Zeke Vandenberg, who had some moments during minicamp OTAs as well with their flashing. But man, I am cheering for Mitchell Agude. Everything we've been hearing about him has been so good so far. Just keep riding that momentum that he has started. Let's go to the defensive line here for number 2. Brandon Pili, undrafted guy out of USC. And this one is partially due to the position that he plays. But at the end of the day, just because you're playing at a position where maybe there's not a lot of depth doesn't necessarily guarantee you a roster spot. You're going to have to earn it once camp is here. You're going to have to earn that spot. But let's go back to the depth at the position for a second. Because you got Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Raekwon Davis. That's your core interior defensive lineman. Those are your starters. Those are your locks. Those are your guys that are going to get the meaningful reps. The rest of the guys that I'm about to mention, you're not going to be able to clear cut point that's a guaranteed backup guy. All of these guys that I'm about to mention are battling for a backup spot, for roster spots in general. You got Jalen Twyman, you got Brandon Pili, Anthony Montalvo, and Josiah Bronson. So unless the Dolphins sign a free agent defensive lineman, we've heard stuff about Akeem Hicks in the past, and Ndamukong Suh, guys like that are still out there. Unless we sign someone like that, I think at least one of these guys makes the Dolphins' final 53-man roster. But a couple of the reasons why I like Pili in this camp battle per se, one, the Dolphins did give him $100,000 of guaranteed money as a UDFA, which is decent coin for an undrafted player. And two, just kind of what he can do at that position. He can play that zero tech nose tackle. He can take on blockers. With his size, with his athleticism, he can be a presence at stopping the run. He can shed. He can create tackles for loss, like what we saw so much of last year from Zach Sealer, from Christian Wilkins. He can do that kind of stuff as well. So with Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Raekwon Davis, all those guys I just mentioned, all those guys are entering the last year of their deal. And yeah, we're expecting big things of them. And yeah, we want them all back. But in a salary cap sport where you got to be strategic with where you spend your money, maybe the Dolphins find it beneficial to keep one of these younger interior defensive linemen around, grow a guy, develop a guy. We know that Vic Fangio loves his interior defensive linemen. Let a guy stick around for a while. If it's not on the final 53-man roster, maybe it's on the practice squad as well. But regardless, get a guy in because, man, this position could look quite different in 2024 if we don't get things done on the contract side yet in 2023. So we'll see how that goes. But Pili's my second guy. The third guy I've got is linebacker. There's a defensive theme here with my players, as you can see. Aubrey Miller, but Aubrey Miller was the UDFA that basically every fan's favorite to not only make the team as soon as we made the announcement that we signed him, but like, hey, this guy can be a guy. Maybe he can turn into a starter at some level. We think he can contribute at special teams for sure at some level. Maybe at some point grow into a guy that can get meaningful snaps. And all the reasons are there. Look what he did while at Jackson State. All conference twice, 2022 conference defensive player of the year. He did all that. He didn't get a combine invite. The NFL combine. He didn't get a scouting combine invite. But what did he get? He got an invite to the Reese's Senior Bowl. And what did he do there? Showed out. And that's exactly what he had to do because you're going up against FBS guys for the most part in those practices and then in that game. And really all he had to do was show that he belonged. And not only did he show that he belonged, but man, he was out there making plays, kind of making more of a name for himself, which really led a lot of people to believe that he would get drafted. Obviously, he didn't. Obviously, the Dolphins signed him. But man, you just fall in love with what you see from him on the field, especially just athletically. Man, the dude is chiseled. He is absolutely rocked up. He's been to a gym a couple of times in his life, plays with that intensity. His hair is on fire. If he gets squared up to a ball carrier, he is that middle linebacker thumper that you just love to see just get a squared up hit and see what he can do. But being an undrafted free agent, there are a couple of things he's going to have to overcome kind of at that next level. One of the reasons he probably didn't get drafted, he doesn't have the ideal, the prototype size. He's like 5'11", 230, I believe. If you flip on his tape as well, playing middle linebacker, he's got a few more missed tackles than you would like to see. And then obviously what I said to begin with, the Dolphins don't have actual draft capital invested in him. And no, that's not the end all be all, but it kind of seems like if you draft a guy, he's at least got those expectations. He's at least got that upper hand going into camp as being a guy that, yep, you invested a draft pick into this guy versus just signing him off of the street. But I tell you what, to wrap this up, if there's a position on this Dolphins defense where opportunity awaits, let's just say it's linebacker because you got what? David Long, Jerome Baker, that we assume are those starting inside linebackers in that base 3-4 defense. But then you got Duke Riley, who we all like. He's a hard worker. He's serviceable. But at the end of the day, you don't want him playing a numerous meaningful snaps. He does good on special teams, but you don't want him being your every down linebacker in every single game. And then you got last year's third-round pick, Channing Tindall, who has the athleticism, has that raw talent, but couldn't get the mental side of the game figured out. Now, not only could he not get that figured out last year, but now you just brought in Vic Fangio and a brand new defense. So yeah, he's got a year of NFL experience under his belt, but now he's going to be asked to play in a whole new kind of defensive scheme. And who knows what all his role and what he's going to be responsible for on the field, how that changes from Boyer to Vic Fangio. So he's got that going. Then we got guys like Andrew Van Ginkel. We talked about him getting reps at outside linebacker. Now we're talking about getting reps at inside linebacker. So there's guys, but you can't tell me that there's not opportunity there, especially with David Long. I mean, David Long's already working through an injury that's kept him out of OTAs and kept him out of minicamp. Now, I hope he's going to be fine, but injuries has been his thing. So like I said, if there's a position where maybe opportunity awaits and someone has to answer that bell and be the guy, why not Aubrey Miller take advantage of the reps you get in these training camp practices, everything that you've got going for you, make your reps count. That's all I can say. But those are my three guys. Like I said, I'm curious to see who you've got, go ahead, drop your candidates in the comment section. Let's carry on the conversation there. That is my time for today, Miami Dolphins fans. And until next time, fins up.